I, along with my fellow internet reviewers, love Don Bluth. Well, at least some of his movies. I guess that would be half? I'm of the popular opinion that most of Don Bluth's library is pretty mixed. At first you had some great movies like The Secret of NIMH and The Land Before Time, but then he went on to make movies that were not so great, like, say, A Troll in Central Park or The Pebble and the Penguin. The quality of his films rebounded with Titan AE, but because that movie was a financial failure, he hasn't been back to direct since. But of course, he'll be back to direct that new Dragon's Lair movie, which is not going to be animated anymore. Oh, that sucks. While I do agree with a lot of people that Don Bluth's filmography is a bit spotty, I disagree on when it went downhill. I've always believed that his first bad movie was A Troll in Central Park. What a way to get started, right? His first bad movie ever also happened to be his worst one. That's a minority opinion though, because a lot of people seem to believe that his bad movies began with Rock-A-Doodle, which I for one do not understand. Is it as good as The Secret of NIMH or An American Tail? Well, no, but it's not supposed to be. It's a completely different movie. It's like comparing apples to oranges or alligator purses to Joe Lieberman. Rock-A-Doodle gets a ton of hate, and I've never been able to understand why. Is it a perfect movie? No, absolutely not. But is it bad? I don't think so. In fact, I actually like the movie so much that I own a cell from it. Yeah, an actual production cell. Here's the Grand Duke of Owls, and over here on the left is Hunch, his little scamp of a sidekick. This is from the kitchen scene, and over here on the right is the actual cell, and on the left is the scene from the movie. Just a little side-by-side comparison. Let me tell you why I believe that Rock-A-Doodle is criminally underrated. Keep in mind this is all my opinion, so hear me out, okay? And hey, maybe I'll change your mind, but also maybe not. There's only one way to find out. So first of all, what is Rock-A-Doodle? It's an adaptation of Chanticleer, which is this old French play about this rooster who's so prideful that he believes that his crow brings the sun up in the morning. It's a loose adaptation, yes, but it's no different than what Disney does with the likes of The Little Mermaid or Frozen. In this retelling, Chanticleer's crow actually does bring the sun up, and he's widely revered for it. But one day, the sun comes up without him crowing, so he feels like the people don't want him anymore, mostly because they mock and belittle him. So Chanticleer runs off to the city to make it as a singer. But without Chanticleer's crowing to bring the sun up, the evil Grand Duke of Owls and his legions of creatures of the night are now able to do whatever they want. There's no sun to keep them back, so their evil can spread. The Grand Duke of Owls will do anything to make sure that Chanticleer never comes back to the farm. This includes destroying the farm that Chanticleer knew and loved, eating his friends, and causing his own manager to throw obstacles in his way to distract him from the country life that he misses. And then a young boy named Edmund calls out to Chanticleer, but the Grand Duke of Owls doesn't like that one bit. He turns Edmund into a cat with the hopes of eating him, but gets scared away. So now it's up to Edmund, Patou the dog who can't tie his shoes, and a couple other colorful side characters to bring Chanticleer back before it's too late. And that's the story of Rock-A-Doodle. A lot of people think that it's a very strange story, and yeah, it is, but a lot of Don Bluth's best movies are strange. Do you really think that Secret of NIMH or All Dogs Go to Heaven are normal? No, that's what makes them interesting. But a story can only be as good as its characters, and these guys are pretty good. While the kid who plays Edmund isn't the best actor, I think the character of Edmund is pretty solid. That may be because I'm a little bit biased. No, I wasn't the guy who played him, I'm much too young for that. But I was a lot like him when I was his age. I too wanted to grow up too quickly and be just like the adults. I didn't like people saying you can't do X because you're too young or too little. So yeah, I kinda see a little bit of my past self in Edmund. And hey, without that, he's still good. He's got a naturally flowing arc that grows as the story does. It doesn't feel convoluted, it doesn't feel forced or rushed or dragged out, it's at perfect length. Not too much focus, not too little. Granted, it's the same thing that Dave and the Giant Pickle would teach you later on, but it still fits with the character and is a good lesson for kids. The side characters are also a lot of fun. We got Patou, the wise dog who knows everything about everything else, but he doesn't know how to tie his shoes. So sad. There's Snipes, the neurotic magpie who's obsessed with city life, Peepers, the know-it-all and extremely talkative mouse, Hunch, the Grand Duke of Owls' pygmy nephew who wants to completely annihilate our main characters, but doesn't really have the know-how to do it. Goldie, the semi-femme fatale wannabe singer who's used to lure Chanticleer back into his desire for stardom. Pinky, Chanticleer's manager, who's basically the evil version of Colonel Tom Parker. And now let's talk about our hero and villain, Chanticleer and the Grand Duke of Owls. You cannot talk about one without talking about the other. You know why? These guys are total polar opposites, which really helps with the theming of the film. Chanticleer is open, friendly, and very laid back, while the Grand Duke of Owls is angry, uptight, and has a superiority complex. Chanticleer's small and fit, while the Grand Duke of Owls is gigantic and very overweight. Chanticleer loves upbeat, fast rock songs, while the Grand Duke of Owls loves slow and dramatic opera songs. You see the differences? You see the connections? Know what I mean? Know what I mean? And now, speaking of the songs, they're easily the best part of the entire film. You got Glenn Campbell to be Chanticleer. How could you go wrong? Answer, you don't. Sun Do Shine, Back to the Country, Treasure Huntin' Fever, Rock-A-Doodle, not the movie, the song. There's a song called Rock-A-Doodle in the movie Rock-A-Doodle. Anyways, all of these are extremely catchy and well done. They feel like real country songs, not songs from a movie with a country theme. Then there's also the other songs, like the Grand Duke of Owls numbers. Just like the Grand Duke of Owls' personality, they're loud, bombastic, and very threatening. Yes, even the likes of, say, the Owl's Picnic or Tweedledee, you know, those infamous songs that everyone likes to make fun of? Even those serve a purpose. It's the Grand Duke of Owls and his minions taunting the other animals at the farmhouse. Once they run out of the flashlight batteries, they're dead. And it's only a matter of time. The Grand Duke of Owls is someone who loves to play with his food when he eats it. And I'd say that's enough talking about the Grand Duke of Owls for one day. I want to have enough to say when he gets his own character quest video when it comes back. Whoops, did I just accidentally let something slip, or did I do that on purpose? It's still a mystery. The animation's great, but what do you expect? It's Don Bluth. Even in his worst films, the animation is always a sight to see. Well, except The Pebble and the Penguin, because as Don Bluth himself said, the Hungarian animators didn't really know what they were doing, but it's not all bad to look at. Once again, like Chanticleer and the Grand Duke, it's all about contrast. Whenever it's light out, everything is bright, cheery, happy-go-lucky, and totally innocent. But once the sun goes down, everything becomes dark, twisted, and eerie. The shading and color scheme really helps make the animation pop. Additionally, it also makes the threats a lot more intimidating, and I'm not just talking about our villains. And it also helps make things that much happier when the sun does come back and everything becomes bright and cheery once again. Even the live action segments are pretty good. I mean, at the end it's pretty obvious that Edmund's on a green screen, but when the Grand Duke of Owls is in his bedroom, that looks pretty good. And before I continue any further, here's our wonderful editor Billy H.L. to give his opinion on Rock-A-Doodle. I hope you enjoy, because if not, there's no refunds. I get the ad revenue either way.
Haha, bet you didn't actually think I'd say something for this video, but here I am. Now I'm just gonna be blunt and just say this right away. Rock-A-Doodle is awesome. And no, not in a guilty pleasure way, not in a ironic sort of way. I legitimately mean it. This movie, it's in the title, it rocks. Now, again, like, compared to Don Bluth's other films, it's, oh yikes, it's uncomparable. But not in a bad way, because I mean, for every director out there who constantly dabbles in dark, depressing, or edgy stuff, sometimes it's nice to blow off steam and just do something stupid, or just something fun, or something aimed more for the kiddos. I mean, why not? I mean, there's nothing constraining them from doing so, and apparently it's bad for Don Bluth, but it's like okay for someone like Robert Rodriguez to make the Spy Kids movies? Where's the logic in that? Like, what makes people think that? But I seriously cannot talk about this film without mentioning the gorgeous art direction, both in the farmyard and in the cityscape. Now, I do personally really like farmlands and animation, especially in stuff like Barnyard, where, like, I mean, it is kind of primitive with its CG, but wow, you gotta admit the setting in that one actually does look pretty cool. But in this one, it's all bright and happy and green and, you know, until it's like flooded like hell, but, you know, even when it's flooded, it still looks kind of nice for a flooded farmland, you know what I mean. But the urban landscape, oh man, the urban landscape. It really shows that there needs to be more animated movies with real city landscapes. No, not the fake like in Soul. No. I mean like real time, like Cats Don't Dance or TMNT kind of environments. And this film especially fills that void. And, you know, honestly, I would love to see like a noir movie set in a city with this vibrant color scheme. And that music, that music is amazing. The Chanticleer songs, sounding a lot like a mock Elvis Presley, are legitimately just uncanny with how good they are as impressions of Elvis Presley music. Glenn Campbell really has to applaud himself for this kind of stuff, like, dude. But that doesn't mean that the Christopher Plummer as Grand Duke of Owls is any worse. In fact, he's just as good, especially with the whole creepy opera music. But I mean, come on, the Owl Picnic, man. That's a good song to have when the boys are going out one night. I gotta be honest here. But seriously though, like, the production value is very high, and I'm surprised not many people actually give the soundtrack a lot of recognition. I mean, they still praise it, but they're always like, oh, you know, like, the narration destroys it. And yeah, that's, oh god, the narration. But, you know, Mr. Media Mementos guy himself is going to talk about that later, so I dare not speak much about it. Even the plotline itself flows really nicely. I really don't see why people consider it a tonal mess. It's pretty damn consistent, if I'm being honest. I mean, like, everyone has a good setup, they have a good conclusion, nothing, like, abrupt happens. Like, it's still a pretty lighthearted adventure with just the right amount of darkness, but with the right amount of lightness, to the point where it's not just a cutesy-wootsy adventure the whole way through, and it's just really fun. Why do people hate this again? But yeah, Rock-A-Doodle, easy 8 out of 10. Not a perfect 10 movie, but obviously, like I said before, and like what Mr. Media Mementos himself said before, it's not trying to be the most brilliant movie of all time. It's just having fun, and that's really all you could see it as. It's just a shame that nobody really appreciates it for that. They just expect a lot more. I guess that's what happens when you're spoiled with a bunch of dark movies, huh?
Now, what are people's criticisms of Rock-A-Doodle? Let's go over them, shall we? The story is very weird. Well, yeah, we went over that, but I think it works in service to the plot. The story is cluttered and unfocused. I don't know, I thought it went together pretty well. Edmund, Chanticleer, and Goldie's arcs all flow together pretty nicely, and there's nothing really extraneous or unneeded in there. If anything, it possibly could have gone on a little longer. The live-action segments are clunky and unnecessary. I will say that they were a bit unnecessary. The film would probably be the same if they were animated, but I didn't think they were so bad. And besides, the live-action segments only take up, like, what, 7 minutes of the movie? It's a lot more juvenile and kid-friendly than the last films. Is that really a bad thing? I mean, it's going for a completely different style here. Just because it's a little more kid-focused than his last films doesn't make it bad. That's like saying that Tim Burton's Batman or Beetlejuice are bad because they're not as kid-friendly as one of his earlier films, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. It's going for something entirely different. A director doesn't have to stick with the same tone or themes throughout their whole career. They can try something new and shake things up. Which, for the record, is what Bluth did here. Now, let's be clear. Rock-A-Doodle definitely has some problems. Like I said, Edmund is not the best actor. He's fine as a character, but as an actor, not so much. Despite the fact that the film loves to explain everything to you, one of the most important parts of the story is left completely unanswered. And that is, how did the sun rise without Chanticleer crowing? And speaking of explaining things, that's perhaps Rock-A-Doodle's biggest flaw. Patou never shuts up with his narration. To be fair, this was not Bluth's idea. The film got recut by the studio's executives to be more quote-unquote kid-friendly. This meant that they had to remove many dark scenes, including the infamous skunk pie one, add a bunch of colorful little shapes into the Grand Duke of Owl's magic breath, and of course, have Patou explain everything going on in the movie through narration. It's bad enough that he doesn't let the audience think for themselves, but he also talks during Chanticleer's songs. You do not get Glenn Campbell to be in your movie and talk over all of his songs. You just don't do that. I will say though, at least the narration becomes much less prominent after the first 10 or 15 minutes, but during that first 10 or 15 minutes, oh no, that's real bad. I think that if the original version of Rock-A-Doodle were released, you know, the one without the studio meddling, I think it would have been pretty well received. On par with, say, All Dogs Go to Heaven's approval rating, which I think would be pretty good. But as it stands, Rock-A-Doodle gets an unfair rap that I don't think it deserves. It's a lot more entertaining, competent, and well put together than people give it credit for. If you want to check it out, then by all means, please do. Rock-A-Doodle needs some more fans, that's for sure. If you're still not convinced, to each their own. But I will always be in the camp that says that Rock-A-Doodle is criminally underrated. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What do you think of Rock-A-Doodle? What's your favorite Don Bluth movie? Do you have any unpopular Don Bluth opinions? Well, if you like Rock-A-Doodle, I guess that'd be one of them. Comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time!